up, I would like to invite Dr. Gopi Kurup, CEO of Axiata Enterprise, with over 25 years of experience in the technology industry, for his presentation on making businesses future-ready in the digital era.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gopi. I run the enterprise part of Axiata's business in region. A little less known part of a telco group, and I hope to spend a couple of minutes just explaining what we do, and more importantly, what is the type of impact which we bring into our client base together. So we exist in 6 different markets. Quite an exciting footprint for us from a group perspective, as in it's a very young demographic which we serve, very young enterprises, meaning both large industry clients to SMEs to the public sector, has got quite a lot of growth potential and investments into this space. What's been quite interesting to observe, apart from the top GDP growth in most of the countries which we operate in, is actually the digital adoption. I think a number of the previous speakers had spoken about that, and we measure that as the adoption within the space which we serve. And apart from the top line connectivity demand which has been growing, there's also been this push to change the way businesses are operating in this market. And that's predominantly, we've seen 2 patterns which has come out of that. One, there's been a very low base of digital adoption in these markets which we serve. So there's very little legacy to get across from that. And 2, the real push has been the pandemic period. I mean, during the lockdown, during the real need for the businesses to survive, the adoption rate of tools have been very good in these spaces, also driven by the fact that there's a lot of government aid in most of the markets which we operate in to adopt those digital tools. So this is the Axiata footprint of where we work. We serve more than 150,000 enterprise clients in that market which we are at. The way we've sort of organized that is based on our strength as a leading mobile operator in those countries. So we're present in all of the geographies where we operate in. We're regionally sort of present. We started off from a consumer strength first, but that also gives us very strong sales capabilities in small and medium businesses, in larger enterprises, in where we operate. We have 700 odd personnel who are able to serve more than just pure connectivity plays alone, but also ICT solutions in those markets. And I'll go through a bit of details around that. Again, we serve large enterprises and SMEs in these growing markets. And we've also invested in both enterprise digital transformation and industry-based transformation. On the enterprise-based transformation, our partnerships have predominantly been with the hyperscalers of the world. So the familiar names like Microsoft, Google, AWS, for that push of IT changes. But more importantly, we've also sort of tied up with vertical experts. People like Capgemini, Tech Mahindra are partners at Axiata Group. And they bring in specific vertical knowledge and capabilities, which is sort of an important aspect in technology adoption within the enterprises which we serve. And we've also acquired a number of companies to help us in these new areas of growth, which I'll go through in just a bit. Our brands in market, a number of them would be very familiar. Again, in our home market here with Celcom Digi, but more importantly, XL Axiata, Hypernet, and LinkNet business in Indonesia. That's our branding within the Indonesia brand. Dialog Enterprise in Sri Lanka, Smart for Business in Cambodia, and we have Ncell for Business in Nepal. That's our sort of go-to-market names which we've held. We've also got a large delivery center or delivery capability within the group under Axiata Digital Labs. Historically, they came up as the software development arm for our own internal IT transformation. But the skill sets which we've developed there is a real leverage for us to take these solutions into market. So when we are implementing sort of smart solutions for any of the verticals which we have, we've got very good capability in-house distributed between Sri Lanka, Kuala Lumpur, and Indonesia, which is able to then provide that into our enterprise clients. So as a group, we've shifted away from investing into technology stacks more into people and skills to be able to deliver that tech. So we've made a conscious decision to work with the largest sort of leading tech players globally, and to be able to provide that as their services into our enterprise clients. So again, familiar names like Microsoft, Google, Cisco, we've got good, strong certifications in region to be able to take that out into market. Last but not least, I think there were questions around, 5G and then sort of metaverse and then what that impact would be for the industry. And the observation which we've been seeing in market, at least over the last 2 or 3 years, it's really sort of going through that hype cycle. Things like metaverse were out in the fore 2, 3 years ago. It's going through its sort of rationalization curve. And for us, from an enterprise perspective, we foresee that more of that adoption would shift away from just consumer experience into one which is more industry-driven. And that industry-driven will also be driven by the metrics or the measurements in those industries for things like safety, for health, for efficiencies of production, will be helped or augmented by things like metaverse. And we see that coming together with the investments in network, where things like 5G is designed more for short, quick bursts of data, of comms between machines, more than machines to humans. So that augmentation of things like metaverse into that augmented reality is something which will come up pretty quickly. And following suit would be security. I mean, the traditional sort of IT security and enterprise security has been driven by, back-end systems, operational support systems. But with 5G investments, the ability to communicate and to talk to devices become completely dispersed. So going into a manufacturing facility, IT security used to sit within the back office or what was traditionally the administrative office in that building. But with the 5G investments, sensors and electronic components start getting onto your shop floor. And effectively, all of that needs to be secured and presence known across the board. So as a group, we've made more conscious effort and decisions to invest into security systems to be able to support that, to do that. And we're quite clear in a number of these areas where we want to be able to support our clients in those transformation areas. We don't have all of those internal capabilities ourselves. We made a conscious decision about 2 or 3 years ago to also then acquire a number of companies which help us or support us in those areas. We started off here in Malaysia with an acquisition of a company called BridgeNet, which was a large managed security provider who had a good client base. We've got LinkNet in Indonesia, which is very strong and growing ISP and fixed network provider. And that's highly complementary to our existing mobile provider of XL in Indonesia. So bringing both of those capabilities together, we're able to serve our clients with more of a fixed mobile convergence proposition in that market. As well as Hypernet, which was the largest Aruba and HP partner in APAC. The strength which Hypernet brings on board is that they have the knowledge base and client base of being able to bring connectivity into a premises. I mean, our traditional sort of strength was to be able to provide mobile services to end devices to premises, But being able to provide that type of seamless connectivity within a premise was something which HyperNet was able to bring in for us. H1 was another acquisition in Sri Lanka, and they were one of the largest South Asia Microsoft partners growing out of Colombo. They've come on board and built up services around migration of Microsoft tools. We'll go through some of the examples of what we've been able to provide our clients by working in those areas. And we're constantly sort of looking out to partner and then work with other vertical industry experts in region to be able to do that. Moving on to security, as I mentioned, this is one of our core focus areas going forward. And the reasoning behind that, we're seeing security come to the fore for most of our clients. It's sort of taken within their own design principles or build principles of both facilities and IT investments which they're doing. So previously, it always used to be about getting speed, getting number of users in IT systems. Now security is built into all of those design criteria, both from an offensive and defensive capability. Offensive meaning that with the footprint of sensors and then devices which are introduced within the premises, the first thing most of the clients do is do a quick sweep across those devices to ensure whether there's any form of vulnerability which appears with it. And that's done together with all of the business users in those premises, because they look at it as an interaction within their day-to-day interactions with those devices and the cross-functionality between those units. And of course, on our defensive side, to continuously sort of get tools to make sure that we got the best or the latest sort of patches or versions onto all of those systems which are there. As I mentioned, a lot of these investments came from an IT perspective, but we're seeing a lot more adoption of that within the industries themselves because of the penetration of 4G plus private networks and 5G investments into that. So as a group, again, we've spent quite a lot of effort and then time in designing these type of services which we want to take into market, and the investments which are done in people skills to be able to manage that. We have quite a large facility out in PJ at the Celcom DG building, which manages security for our entire group in region. And this is what we use as a base to take to our clients in market to do that. Some examples of tie-ups, again, with sort of global leaders in specific verticals, which we've had at a group level. And here too, as a group, we've spent quite a lot of time thinking about which are the specific verticals and industries which we want to play in. And that's also been driven by markets like in Bangladesh and in Indonesia, where governments themselves have been spending a lot of money on infrastructure to change those industries within their operating markets. So we participate in areas like Bangladesh in port transformation exercises to increase efficiencies and to reduce the type of leakages which there are in the system. We do the same for things like mining in Indonesia, which I'll go through a bit more details around that. And most of these tie-ups are for the fact of knowing how does tech then impact the actual industry in itself. And that's something which is, as a skill set, we as a telco group don't possess internally. So we work with global expertise in doing that type of transformation exercise for those industries themselves. We've got a number of engagements both locally here in Malaysia and in region. Companies like Walton Manufacturing is one of the largest conglomerates in Bangladesh. And we're constantly engaging with them to see how they can themselves improve their efficiencies within their manufacturing facilities which they have. They do things from all the way from white goods, up to television sets, and then sensors are all established out in Bangladesh to do that. Excel in Indonesia has been in the forefront in the areas of providing tech for mining. Areas like in Kalimantan, there are big coal mines which have opened up with companies like Vale and then Palmer. And the first challenge there is really about providing connectivity within Kalimantan in itself. So the initial engagements are always about trying to get telco infrastructure up so they can establish communications. But once we start doing that, the client then wants to be able to connect trucks and their mining equipment and to be able to talk to each other. We were kind of interested in this because we were providing telematic solutions for the drivers there. So they had this little camera inside the trucks, and they were monitoring the movement of those trucks within the area in itself. But as we started to engage with the client, we then realized that the actual business metric or the actual operational metric that they were looking at was for OHSE compliance. Companies like Vale are one of the largest mining companies out of Brazil globally, and they had global standards to meet. Once we started to engage with them after 12, 18 months, we then realized that the actual problem that they were trying to solve is to meet that basic compliance globally. That made the discussion a lot richer with the client because it wasn't really just about the technology solution which we were providing. They wanted to meet their ISO OHE standards to be able to do that. And once we were able to provide that as a solution, they were then keen to replicate that within the Indonesian market in itself. And again, through Celcom DG, we also do that here in Manjung, where it is the largest Vale's coal logistics arm. So once the mining's done out in Indonesia, the coal's transported here and then moved globally. So that telematic solution was also be able to replicate here in north of Lumut in Manjung to do that. Dialog, our company out in Sri Lanka, has got multiple solutions for different industries, all the way from food safety to agriculture production. In this particular case was for sensors which were introduced within rubber and the rubber manufacturing process. We also do quite complicated and high-end solutions for things like food safety. Little known fact outside of Colombo or Sri Lanka is that Dialog provides the entire solution for food chain within the Colombo airport. So we help monitor from the point of producing or preparing the food all the way for it to be delivered into an aircraft. All of the monitoring and sensors around that movement is supported by Dialog in those areas to do that. So these type of learnings which we have in particular verticals or the way we serve our clients for agriculture or for mining or ports, we then have a forum out at the group on a monthly basis, which helps us cross-pollinate or share these learnings across. And what's also been interesting is that client bases which we've had in single countries have also started operations to where we exist. So those type of learnings and solutions which go across is an easier communication to our client because we've done it in one particular market. Similarly, with hyperscalers and then technology providers, this specific example is in Bangladesh, where ISPAT had multiple sort of inbuilt or in-house built tools for productivity, from their own mobile to in-house built ERP systems to HR systems were done across that. And together with Google, we were able to then engage the client and move them onto one particular platform. So now they just have a number of widgets and apps for all of their entire operations. Still a work in progress in doing that, but we've started working with them over the last 6 months to be able to migrate each one of these tools for their own worker base to do that. Similarly, with H1 in Sri Lanka, Hydramani Group is one of the largest garments manufacturers in region or in the sub-Indian continent. And we provide them quite a lot of Microsoft and dashboard tools for improvement of their own garment manufacturing. There's also been an interesting process for us because our initial engagement with them was for a simple exercise of moving their on-premises email servers onto cloud. But as soon as we started to do that, we then understood what their own operational challenges are, the inability to get insights into their garment manufacturing process. And on a step-by-step basis, we were able to then understand what is it that we were trying to solve for them in bringing their efficiencies higher and their sort of quality levels higher to do that. Particularly interesting insights we got from that is that the garment manufacturer consumes millions of needles in their manufacturing plants. But unknown to us, each needle is then accounted for throughout that process because they don't want any broken needles, any sort of fragments of this metal in garments. So any operator on the floor who has some problem with their needle needs to actually turn up somewhere and give that needle back before they're issued a new one. And so this meant that there was some downtime within their operations and that machine or that line wouldn't work. So we were able to then provide tech to them to be able to see that how do they do that and how do they account for it from just a terminal or a device which they have. This started off in Sri Lanka, and they've now started to expand that out into their Bangladesh and other market operations to do that. But that all really just started off with a simple Microsoft conversation which was happening with them of moving an email server to the cloud. We've started to expand the portfolio of competencies and expertise which we have on the Microsoft bit. Again, it started off with the simpler tools around productivity, which is Outlook and onto 365. Now we're starting to build up more skills onto ERP systems, into Dynamics, and the ability to then migrate existing applications which they have onto cloud platforms to do this. And this is again supported by Axiata Digital Labs, which is our in-house knowledge base in hyperscaler tech. Similarly with LinkNet, which has got a large footprint of hotels which they serve in Indonesia. Journey started off by just providing internet services and Wi-Fi services within the hotel chains. But that relationship soon started to get deeper as in hotels started to rely upon LinkNet to provide their end client solutions. And to us, we then needed to know what does that really mean? So we had to spend a lot of time with almost check-in processes for hotel chains, all the way up to the client, logging into their Wi-Fi system, being able to communicate with the front office to the point of checkout solutions. Again, in this type of case, we started to work with partners who were able to provide those solutions together with LinkNet. So let me finish off there. So it's been an interesting journey for us, driven by 3 or 4 factors. Based on our connectivity strength and sort of client relationships which we've had in the region, we've been challenged as a company to then understand industries better. How do they sort of operate within that environment? And we made a very conscious decision that we didn't have the skill sets internally. And so we either partnered with people who knew that, or we acquired some smaller companies who was able to bring us that knowledge base. With that as a base, then that became the tool for us to invest into those skill sets, both through Axiata Digital Labs, into our Cyber Fusion Center for SOC, And that's really started to give us better traction in the clients which we're serving in market. The challenge for us is to make sure that that sort of knowledge base transfers across all of the footprints which we work upon to do that, and understand this change in the markets or the industries as quickly as possible. The acceleration there has also been because of private networks, 4G moving onto 5G, where the connectivity space again has expanded more from serving consumers to serving small and medium businesses and large enterprises to do that. That in a quick snapshot is Axiata Enterprise and then what we operate in the market.
Thank you, Dr. Gopi. We will now be taking questions from the floor. Once again, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we will pass the mic to you. Any questions for Dr. Gopi regarding Axiata Enterprise? There we go.
Hi, my name is Samveg. I am from Tech Mahindra. A very simple question. So, in my opinion, the adoption of 5G in enterprises is very slow. People are skeptical about it. Enterprises obviously want quick ROI and all. And wherever we have seen use cases across the world, some of them have not, been so profitable. So, what are your thoughts on that, and how do we establish that communication with the enterprise clients to, let them know the benefits and to, develop that positivity around it so the adoption is quicker?
That's a very good question. It's not an easy one to solve because I think there's, multiple factors around that. So one, there's no standard template or a formula across all of the industries. We're sort of used to IT transformation where that was a lot more possible, meaning that moving again, an ERP solution from on-prem to cloud was an easy thing to communicate with clients and they all understood that. But the moment you get into the domain of their business in itself, it becomes challenging in multiple areas. Garment manufacturing as an example of that. To Hydro Money, where their own industry was going in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years was difficult to comprehend on its own. And then to say, what is the tech which is going to help support that or change that became a big iterative process together with them. So what has been successful for us is to take smaller pieces of work as opposed to the entire sort of shop floor and take that through with the clients in a stepped change process to do that. So it's still a big challenge to go out there and say that 5G is going to impact your industry and you should do all of those investments up front. It's just been, again, piecemeal solutions which have been done. A more practical approach which we've taken is also not wait for 5G rollouts. So in the case of like Palma or Vale in Indonesia, the solutions have actually been built just on private LTE networks. So even existing LTE solutions can support quite a lot of what clients want to be able to do. And once they've proven that, that brings some value into their business, I think they become a lot more open towards, transforming that for 5G support.
Thank you for that question. We have another question at the back.
Hi, Doctor. I'm Ashraf from Exim Bank. So I was interested with your slide on GPH ISPAT, Bangladesh, doing Google Workspace solution for enterprise. I think that's quite interesting because if you relate back with the current Malaysia government focus on SMEs, if you refer to the recent policies, NIMP and Economy Madani, and even the recent RMK12 revision, there's quite a lot of emphasization on SMEs. So with the push for Google Workspace solution, enterprise solution is good for Malaysian SMEs, but I don't see so many success stories of Malaysian SMEs using Google Workspace solutions, because I'm also doing some small business. So there's a certain problems of integrating our business. Sometimes we use Notion, we sometimes use Tableau, so there's no integration of it. And even sometimes you use just like a communicating using WhatsApp or Telegram. So there's no like a good professional future growth progressive solution for SMEs in Malaysia lah. So what's your comment on that?
Yeah.
Thanks.
That was a good question, Ashraf. I'll just take a step back. We saw a huge change, or a big change in the adoption of digital tools, especially with mobile packages, during the pandemic. And that was really pushed by need more than sort of want. The SME clients were sort of used to a typical example of that is an F&B outlet here. They had physical interaction. Quite a lot of the change of money was, with physical notes and things. And that changed overnight. And so they needed to then adopt the tools very, very quickly. And we saw that growth together pushed by things like the Penjana grant, which was a big boost at that point for the adoption. So there, the adoption process, the learning process of using tools, both from providing managed Wi-Fi internally, moving to apps to start taking orders around it, to do POS solutions took off. The curtailing factor around that is that there were a number of SMEs which didn't survive the pandemic cycle, right? So there was a drop off from that perspective. But the ones who did, and we're seeing that as a pattern both in Indonesia, in Bangladesh, in here, they've just continued using that tool. So if there's an encouragement to do that, would be that if there are incentive schemes, or even for us as telcos, to communicate that value of the tool better to the SMEs in itself, to do that. I mean, you picked specifically on Google. Again, a pattern which we've seen from the market is that Google seems to resonate much better with the SME client base. I think because of the tools which Google had was very consumer-centric. So if you take, from a Gmail to, using Maps was very consumer-centric, and they've then repositioned that for enterprises. But the take-up rate, again, has been better with the SMEs. A case in point the other way around is with like a Microsoft tool. That seems to be stronger in larger enterprises and in government. Also for the fact that, Microsoft's been serving enterprise clients much, much longer, and then have a better sort of a support system within the region to do that. Number of innovative companies outside of these large hyperscalers have also taken shape. Examples here are people like Kira. We package their POS systems and mini ERP for quite a number of mobile packages which we take to market. And currently we are then taking them into different markets to be able to introduce them. So the first of those are in Indonesia. And again, packaged as a mobile value-add service for that market. One part of that, which we've seen for adoption of tools, at least in the markets which we operate in, on the SME bit, it's also sort of very culturally driven and then language driven. So a number of the apps which we find in different markets don't really adopt very quickly, because they were sort of to solve a local issue or a problem to that. Having said that, we've seen, again, examples like Kira, where it was something which we can take across, but we're opening up to find out whether there are other solutions which we can do that for the SME market.
Thank you for your question. We have time for one last question.
Hi, Dr. Gopi. Suhaili from EPF. Just one quick question. How do you see the AI changes your product propositions going forward? Your thought on that, please.
Sorry, Suhaili, could you repeat that? I missed the key phrase.
Okay. The AI,
okay.
how that would change the product propositions going forward?
That's a very interesting question, and I might not be able to do complete justice on answering that per se. I think similar to what we spoke about in terms of the metaverse question, I think it's going through its sort of cycle of adoption of technology maturity to where it's got to. But I think there's sort of limits to what it can and can't do. I mean, so it's adopted quite a lot in more public spheres or open-ended spheres, which we do that. But adoption within enterprises and then data and information, which is sort of kept within enterprises in itself, I really don't have a take to where that's going to get to. I mean, the obvious answers are, in terms of data mining, information mining, getting some knowledge out of your enterprise data. I think that's an easy one to get to. Where it starts to sort of break or so is when we have, customer data inside it. There's sort of IPR information within the enterprises in itself. And in quite a lot of those cases, that type of data access is not even available across an enterprise by design. So then, it starts to limit the capability of those tools to be able to do that. Sorry, I might not be answering all of your question to do that, but either I don't have enough of knowledge to where that's going to get to in the next 3 or 5 years.
Thank you for all your questions, and thank you, Dr. Gopi, for that informative presentation.